Hello everyone. I am live on Instagram and I am live here on my Facebook page. Welcome everybody. Today I am talking about boundaries with family and how to set those boundaries with your family during this holiday season. Join me if you want to with your breakfast or your cup of coffee or whatever you would like. Now, I do want to say that these will probably be moved to a little bit later in the day here really soon because I will have other obligations in the morning, so it might be moved, but join me. I'm thinking 10 o'clock next week. I'm just going to start pushing things back a little bit and more into the middle of the day. But today we are talking about setting boundaries with family during the holidays and just generally all the time. How do you set boundaries with people, generally speaking, but also how do you set boundaries with people that are super close to you and that you knew during your childhood when you were not maybe aware that you could set boundaries or that you didn't know how to set boundaries. So how do you set boundaries with those people and how do you have a good holiday even if your family kind of bulks on those boundaries. So let's talk about it. So the first step of that, I would say, is to really consider what it is that is making you uncomfortable. That's kind of the first step in setting any boundary, right? I talked about that with setting professional boundaries. Really the first thing here, consider what it is that is making you uncomfortable or what it is that distresses you during this holiday season. Or what it is just generally that distresses you if you're watching this during a time that is not during the holidays, maybe in the future if you're watching the replay or if you're on YouTube watching this. What is it that makes you uncomfortable about interacting with your family? What is it that causes you distress or that you interpret as distressing? What kind of behavior from your family members? Maybe they try to control the way that you are eating. Maybe they try to control the way that you talk about certain subjects around the dinner table. Whatever that is, determine what it is that is distressing you, or maybe you feel controlled by that, by the way that they want you or not want you to talk about a certain subject. So determine what it is that's making you uncomfortable. That's the first step in establishing boundaries with family. I would say the next step is really thinking about the way that you want to communicate about that topic and who you're talking to. So is this a talk to your mom thing? Is this, maybe we all need to just sit down and like have a little powwow about this because it's genuinely making you uncomfortable. Or maybe this is something where you decide to set the boundary. If somebody violates it, you let them know about it. There are lots of ways to do boundaries. I personally think setting expectations is a really great way to go into the holiday season and really any kind of relationship that you're in. Setting boundaries is setting expectations. So if you're able to go into things and say, hey, I understand that politics maybe is a touchy subject in our family. It causes problems. I do have my own beliefs. I just prefer, maybe if we didn't talk about it. So, for example, let's say gay rights is a really hot topic in your family, and maybe you are gay, or maybe it comes up in your family and other people disagree with you or your lifestyle or whatever it is that's going on. Maybe just saying, hey, like, let's just maybe not even bring it up. Can you just treat me maybe like you don't think that, just set up the expectations for what you want from them. Or if it comes up in conversation, say, hey, I don't really want to talk about that. If that's something you don't want to talk about, if it is something that you want to address, of course, that's always up to you. But we're talking about setting boundaries, so that's what I'm talking about. So I would say if you're talking about setting boundaries with topics, it is pretty safe game to do either one of those things, to set up an expectation or to bring it up in a moment and say, hey, that makes me uncomfortable. Or I don't want to talk about that, or whatever it is, right? Let's take the example of you are teaching your children that they have bodily autonomy. So your kids don't have to hug or give kisses to all of the family, and some of your family takes that as offensive, or they take it as something that is just they view as not okay, right? So if you're trying to teach your children this, which I totally recommend, it's very important for children to know that they have bodily autonomy, then you will want to tell them the reasoning why. And that's with any kind of relationship. If something happens, something that maybe they view as out of the ordinary, of course, we don't owe anyone anything. But if you want to maintain positive relationships, it is important to make sure people know the reasoning behind behavior so that they can better understand and empathize. So if you're wanting to discuss something like that, I would recommend referring to my conflict resolution framework, which is essentially, this is the behavior that I'm seeing. The story I'm telling myself about your behavior is this. Can you tell me what your perspective is? That's my really basic conflict resolution framework. The story you're telling yourself is, of course, from Brené Brown, and I recommend Brené Brown if you don't know her. But so I would say I think we're on step 3 of boundary setting. So first, you figure out what it is that's making you uncomfortable, what it is that you need to set boundaries around. Because sometimes we just feel uncomfortable, we know we need boundaries, but we don't know what around. Next, you figure out how you want to talk about those things. Do you want to bring it up in the moment? Do you want to have a powwow about it? Or do you need to just talk to one specific person who maybe is doing this behavior and it's making you uncomfortable? And then lastly, we on this third suggestion, we're talking about conflict resolution, how to actually have that conversation, not just figure out when and who to talk to, but figuring out how do you talk about that, how do you do that conflict resolution. And again, my framework for that is you essentially figure out who it is that you're talking to, right? You figure out, you say, I'm noticing this behavior from you. This is what I'm seeing. This is the story I'm telling myself about the behavior that I'm seeing from you. And I would really like it if you could tell me about your behavior. Just tell me the story you're telling yourself right now. That is a really great way to do conflict resolution. And of course, again, the story I'm telling myself is from Brené Brown. So yeah, that is my basic framework for working through boundaries. I will have a blog posted about this if you're more of a reader here in a few minutes. It did not post last night, auto post for some reason. It usually does at 8 a.m. every day, but I'm going to go ahead and post it after this so that you guys can refer to that if you would prefer to read this content rather than watch me talk about it. But yeah, I really hope you guys have a fantastic day. Remember, please set boundaries with your family this holiday season. This live will be available to rewatch on Facebook. It will be available to rewatch on Instagram, and it will live forever in infamy on YouTube. So you will be able to access this whenever you would like to. Have a fantastic day, guys. Again, remember, set boundaries with your family. It's okay to set boundaries with family. Bye.